Recording in progress.
I think there were a few versions of Tim's name.
Oh, did I have,
David's picking.
There was Tim, and then there was Tim Little C,
Tom.
and
Yeah, no big deal.
but did I get it without an E at the end?
Yeah, you got it without an E,
Okay, well, that's
good.
and Tom, yeah.
So in the second line, Nathaniel is not spelled correctly.
okay.
Oh, yeah, good catch.
And I think Hebe was Hebe present?
Yes,
Yeah, she.
Oh, she was.
Yep.
Yeah.
yep, she was sitting right next to me.
That's right, she was.
Okay, and so, just for completeness, in item 2 on the second page, Tim Cook needs a capital C. And then in item 3, it should be Tim Cook.
Yeah. And I had a question, which I'm sure it's right, but
Item 3,
okay.
In the who seconded it and who, it's Tim Cook, and then farther down,
TM Cook.
the very last
Oh,
line.
right.
Yes,
there we go.
Missed that
And
one.
Tom
Sorry.
Cook.
sorry, yes, good catch.
God, I really missed those. Sorry, Tim, I apologize.
No problem.
At least I
Cold work.
stopped, I double checked the E, because that,
Yeah,
and I knew it was
Jennifer
gonna-
was here, so you had to.
right, exactly, that's why I had
And
double
also,
checked.
is she two N's, Jennifer,
Yeah.
as member of the public?
Yeah, she's
Yes.
2 ends, yeah.
Good catch.
And then, the second paragraph under item 1, there's a sentence that starts, there was a return card with the notification that, I would add, and insert, the landowner will need to return.
Yeah, well, that was my question. It's really true that if the landowner doesn't send it in, then they can't cut
They can't cut
without
that.
them sending, so then they gotta go and find everybody.
Are you certain of that? Because that strikes.
Oh, I'm sorry,
No, they're
no, there's
45
45 days, you're right, there's 45 days after,
Okay,
After
so I
they
guess,
send it.
yeah.
Oh, right.
So should we change that?
I'd like to
Yeah.
change that, yeah,
Yeah,
because
I will.
that's
If the card is not returned,
within 45 days, then Eversource is allowed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes more sense, cause,
Right.
if they had to find everybody that
Right,
didn't
track
send the
everybody
card
down
in.
and say, can I, yes, please. And then that, the following sentence then needs to be adjusted. If the card is returned, Eversource will contact the owner.
Not if it's returned, if they return it, giving them permission.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Maybe you
going
just
on
get
right
rid of,
now.
maybe just get rid of that sentence.
could just strike that last sentence, yes.
yeah.
That's the
Okay.
easiest way.
Yep. And then I also wanna say that Lynn, my wife Lynn was actually on the Zoom for
Was she?
some of the time, yes.
So, okay.
Lynn Brown, L-I-N,
Yeah.
Brown.
I missed that.
That's all I saw.
You know, I thought we were, when we lost power for half a day or days, the first thing I thought about was the old Killam house and this item that was,
I think that was one of the areas that caused problems.
oh, it was.
I believe it was, yes.
Huh, did it? did
There were
they do
3
some
areas
cleaning?
along the East Bedford Road that caused problems. 2 of them were lines down because of trees.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
But, I mean, that just highlights what the problems that can happen.
2,600 people, he said, right?
Yep, and all those people were without power that day.
Yeah.
So David, did you hear about what the Eversource people brought up to us? Was that the current owners of the Killam House aren't
Yes,
allowing
yeah.
tree cutting and that is dangerous for them, but it's also gonna be horribly convenient for, the whole town when either they have an accident or a mishap there, or even if they say that it's gonna be cut, that it's gonna be de-energized for a couple of days for them.
No, hours,
Hours?
Yeah, it'd be a few hours.
yes.
Okay.
They just have to de-energize it so
I
they
have
can
heard
trim.
about that.
Yeah.
They've got, we had the fire chief come to the last select board
Oh,
meeting
good,
and
good,
talk
good,
to us
good.
about it,
Good,
and
good.
also Sean. My understanding is that if that there's some folks that are gonna go talk to the property owners and try and convince them that they ought to
Yep.
give Eversource permission to trim,
Yep.
but that failing that, Eversource has another alternative legal,
Yeah.
option that they can go to the PUC and
Right.
get permission
Mhm.
that way.
Yeah, well, I hope that, you know, cause it's, I guess evidently where their propane tanks are and, you know, where the lines are is like too close for, you know, kind of safety or codes.
Well,
and
if
that
there was
it's-
a fire,
Sorry.
if
No,
if
well,
it created a
but
fire,
it's
then
not-
it would
Yeah,
go.
not
plus
good
what
for
happens.
them.
No, that won't work.
Yeah.
So-
I was told that they had some issues with work that was done in the
Yes.
past,
Right.
and that's what
Yes.
Came out
the
in
source of
last
their
Thursday.
resistance.
Yeah, he said it was 10 years since they've been able to cut there, so. But I drove by and looked, it wasn't, it's not too bad, I mean, there's some branches in the lines, but it's not awful.
Right,
Well,
but,
what worried me was the propane,
yeah,
and
So-
that whole, you know,
But that's up to
risk
them,
of the.
really.
Well, no, it's
It's a
our
risk-
guys,
it's a
our
risk to our-
volunteers go and respond to their problems. And
Yes.
it's, yeah, of course, and that house is
Yeah, we
pretty
wouldn't
historical.
wanna lose that house, that's for sure, that's
So,
probably the best
yeah.
one in town.
Yeah.
Except for the front door. How was that?
I noticed.
They need a new front door, it's all,
So do,
Isn't that the
do we
original?
have a motion to accept the minutes as?
yes, I'll make
amended?
a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I was abstaining because I
Yeah.
missed the meeting, so.
Thank you. I wanted to just mention something, although, Matt and Hebe are not here, but, I signed up for a planning seminar, webinar that's happening next week on the 18th. I think it's more geared for newer
Mhm.
planning and zoning.
They're
members.
really, really good, they cover a lot of territory, and you'll either go, oh yeah, I knew that, or it's like, ooh, I should have known that.
Yeah.
So they're good.
I sent out the link.
Yeah,
And there's a link for something else that's on a Saturday, which I need to go back and,
that's in May, I think, isn't it?
yeah.
Okay, that's the Planning and Zoning Conference, which is another good, when it used to be in person, you'd go, take a Saturday, go down to wherever they were holding it and, take basically a morning and an afternoon class.
Mhm.
Yeah, John Steller and I did that 5, 6 years ago.
And now I think it's all online.
Yeah, and I guess you can look at the tape afterwards if you can't make it that day. I just wanted to mention those opportunities.
Or if you get MCLE credit.
is that the same as Doctor's CME? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
There are some of the classes, there are some engineering credits, I believe, if you.
Or architects credits,
That doesn't help.
doesn't help. I'm trying.
You'd have to do it everything through the local government center, they have some legal ones that may have. The hard road to travel one is coming up.
So, do we have any participants on Zoom?
Yes, Dave Roby is,
Okay, I just
And in
wanted to.
fact, I was just about to say, I think it would be a terrific practice to, at some point early in the meeting, to invite anybody that's on Zoom to say if there's anything on their mind. So that.
that's up
I-
to you.
I will-
Sure.
You're the chair.
I'm the
Here you
chair.
go. Presto changeo, you don't have to decide today, but,
No.
but I think it's a gracious thing to do, if somebody's taking
Sure.
the effort, we just say anything on your mind.
Yeah, and we can dispel any concerns they have or tell them to hang on and listen hard.
Well, that's right. Or you've got item 4 coming up, and I do have something I wanna say there, and
Sure.
so,
Okay, Well, David, it's good to know you are visiting us tonight. Do you have anything on your mind that you wanted to share with us?
You need to mute yourself.
You're on mute, David.
And I hope we're not.
We can't see them.
We can't hear you. I'm sorry, you're on mute.
You can move over there.
Yes, okay.
Okay, we got you.
No longer on mute. What I was saying is that thank you for your service to the town. You're awfully good to give up Thursday nights. So thank you.
Thank you.
So, Vicky, at our last meeting, we I guess decided that we would think about what our housing master plan goals, or the goals might be that we would want to include in a, is this gonna be a separate chapter, or it's gonna be a?
We don't have a housing chapter in our current
Okay.
master plan. The housing is addressed in the land use chapter, just as a general, general thing. So we would, adopt it as a new chapter to our master plan.
Is this something that's recommended, or just seems to be
Well, in that,
appropriate?
it's appropriate, I think, because the Upper Valley and state and region and country is having what everyone calls a housing crisis.
Right,
So we should look at housing in particular and then decide, through the planning process, how we might want to then amend our regulations or not.
Yeah.
So that's what you would do, and, things have changed, gotten worse, I think, since our last master plan, and so they say in New Hampshire, when things change enough to make a difference, that's when you would amend your master plan.
mhm,
There's not a time limit like there was in Vermont. So it seems to me just doing a cut and dry housing chapter would be the most expedient way to go, rather
Sure.
than rewriting the whole land use chapter, just do it that way.
yeah, okay. So we got some comments here from various board members, which David has sent out. And I guess we should maybe go through those and.
Yeah, some are the same,
Right,
they can be
some are-
grouped as kind of similar. And in reading Rich's is almost more implementation stuff, that we would sit underneath some of the goals. Yours aren't really written like goal statements.
They're not goal statements, and, yes, you're right.
So what we need to do with yours is say, oh, that fits under this goal, and
Mhm,
then, but I found that in working on the Hanover master plan, rather than just being all over the map generally talking about housing, if you limited your narrative to something that was, specific to that goal, then you're, supporting it and bringing in data and then specific action recommendations for that goal. And it was a good way to be organized and stay focused on a topic rather than, pulling in, most of the kitchens have microwaves and, we don't need that kind of stuff. So it might be interesting, but we don't need it, so that was a good way to organize. And it also, it's an easy thing to go out to the public with, oh, here's some goals that we think might serve Lyme well. How do you feel about them? You like them, you don't like them, and how would you go about attaining that goal? So it's a good way to solicit input early on in our chapter.
So is that what Hanover did?
Hanover did visioning,
Mm-hmm.
and then we did go out with, we had general forums, and then we did a development forum.
So is the master plan still in process in Hanover?
Hanover
That's-
adopted their master plan on April 2nd, no fool. And I'm working with a consultant now to just come up with a final version. It's,
So that version that we got from you
Yeah,
Was the.
yeah, I mean, there was very little that got changed, if there was anything in that chapter 3, so, yeah. And so it doesn't say final on the master, on the website, but if you go there, that's essentially what got adopted.
Mhm. So Vicki, what is visioning consist of? And
Visioning
what's
is like,
that
where do you
broad
see the
process?
town in 10 years?
And so, are we suggesting that's what we would be doing now, and then go to the town and say, so we thought these things.
Yeah. Do they represent what you, and related to housing specifically? And what don't you like, or what have we not covered? So here's some ideas. Just to be specific, rather than asking, how do you feel about housing, or, that.
Oh, right.
So, but this,
Do you like apple
it
pie?
cuts through a lot of stuff, and it's like, okay, what don't you like about that, or is that too specific, so people can give us some feedback on something that's really relevant to housing.
So who did the visioning process?
We worked with Vanessa Hengen, which is a big engineering firm,
Mhm.
and we also did it during COVID. So a lot of it was online. We had actually a virtual meeting room
Mhm.
that was the focus of where we would be in, we had a session with everybody, and then people broke out into breakout rooms, and we used Dartmouth students to be note takers, and we had staff as facilitators, and then if you couldn't attend that session, which was on a Saturday, then you could go to the virtual meeting room and see things about the different topics and give your feedback. So, and that was open for some number of weeks after the actual event.
So that's the development forum?
No,
Oh.
then we had, based on what people said, we had a development forum, which included, what do you think is the appropriate land use for this section of town? And what kind of development, we had like a visual preference thing like we did here in Lyme, about, what looks good to you.
Mhm.
And so we had people respond to that, and again, that one was held in person, everyone was masked, and that was also available virtually. So, and you can go online and see
Mhm.
all those things on the Hanover website. And, I mean, I feel like, that Vanessa Hengen was great, helping us with those virtual things. But I feel like what we receive from them in terms of written work, they spend like hardly any time in Hanover.
Mhm.
Granted, it was the pandemic, but a lot of the stuff was, kind of boilerplate, written for some other community.
Mhm.
So I ended up rewriting basically everything.
Right.
But
They charged a lot of money,
They
probably.
have charged a lot of money, they did provide a great service, I think they maintain the website, it looks really good. And they're doing formatting, like Hebe does, they're doing that kind of formatting for the online version and for the print version. So, I mean, in terms of their technical skills, I mean, it's kind of administrative, technical. And then they also just crunched a lot of online input that we received, so that was very helpful.
Mhm.
But in terms of like our product, we had a master plan subcommittee, and they basically rewrote all the goals and strategies, and then I wrote the narrative. So, but it seemed to be, that was a pretty efficient way to go about it.
So that was adopted by the planning board?
Yep.
It wasn't voted on, it was adopted on.
Well, that's how you do it. Planning
Right.
board's
I mean,
adopted.
the town doesn't vote on it, just.
No, the
it's
town does
adopted,
not.
Right.
No, and I think the town was really sick of it by the time, because, I mean, we've been working on it since, 2019, and there had been a lot of outreach, and we had draft chapters that was, publicized, it was all on the internet, so people could get it that way, and then we, just actually had a compilation of all of our goals and strategies, and recommendations, and, you know, that was just done separately for each chapter, so people could just focus on that rather than the blah, blah, blah. And then for many of the chapters, we have appendices, you know, they're very data-rich chapters, like transportation. You know, there's a lot of information that the normal person may not care one bit about that, but it's available as backup. So that's how that was structured and seemed to be, you know, so we're, you know, as it turned out, most of our chapters are longer than we wanted. But, you know, it's hard, but we also wanted something that was visually appealing. So there's a lot of graphics and a lot of pictures in there and a lot of maps. And that does expand. And, you know, the formatting is double column, and it could have been, you know, done in a way where we could have fit more words on the page, but we wanted people to feel invited in. Anytime, any place they opened it, we wanted them to say, oh, that looks interesting, and at least to read 2 or 3 pages, even if that wasn't the topic that they were really specifically interested in.
Right.
So that was another goal, and Vanessa Hankin, you know, helped with that, because they developed the visual
Yeah,
thing,
nice.
so, yeah, so that was good, but.
Do you know what percentage of the town participated?
It was really hard because we did all these different outreach things, we didn't just have one. And then we had people who came, we had people online.
Questionnaires?
We did, you know, we had people respond online to different things in that first, you know, where we had the virtual meeting room,
Right.
so, yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'm
then-
just curious, 'cause I mean, in Lyme, we usually get, what, 15 or 20% of the people.
Well, you know, that doesn't,
Responding, so.
if you make every effort you can do,
Oh, right,
and then
right.
that's what you do. And if we decide we need to go out more, I'm not really feeling like we need to ask people, what are your ideas? We need to say, here are our ideas, how do you feel about these, and are they appropriate, what have we, you know, forgotten, or, you know, and to give them something, you know, let's try to save some of their time. They're not, you know, we've been in this thinking about this, I don't know, we've been thinking about a housing chapter for a long time.
Yes.
You know, we are informed by the work that was done around the Common, that's really good work, and then the work that was done down on Route 10, because those are kind of some target areas for us. And I think we need to look at that work and incorporate what we found into this chapter to make it real, right?
I guess, did we finish, we never really
No,
finished the commercial.
we didn't finish Route 10, no,
The commercial district.
no.
Yeah.
And then, when we had resilience here, we also talked about development potential of Route 10, and what could go there. So, I think we can use some of that in this housing chapter.
And when you talk about the number of years that Hanover worked on it, this was an entire master plan, not just a single chapter on
Yeah.
housing, so,
Yeah, 11 chapters,
yeah,
and,
so that's a much more
It's like
exhaustive.
4 years or so.
yeah, and a lot of it was, oh, if we could just have used what the consultant had given us, that would have been great, but it turned out that I ended up basically having to rewrite every chapter, and, I'm only working part-time, and honestly, I can't sit for 8 hours and write. I can sit for maybe 3 hours or 4 and write, and so there was no way, you know, that was gonna come out really fast,
Yeah.
and I had also planned a lot of, as you guys know, vacations. And, those were booked a long time in advance with, I had thought the master plan would have been done and adopted, so, yeah, it took a while. But honestly, just working with our, ad hoc committee, you know, once you got something you wanted to share, you know, then we could have a meeting, and they would take probably two meetings every chapter, just going through it, and then we would, you know, release it to the greater public. So, you know, so we get the consultant thing and then rework it, and it took some time, just, you know, working that way to get it out.
So you would receive a bunch of analysis from the consultant, and then you would have the opportunity to cast it in.
Yeah, I mean, to make it sound like it was Hanover, yeah.
But they've done they've done a lot of heavy lifting as far as understanding the background data. Is that, am I right there?
You know what, they took a lot of stuff off of like Advanced Transit's website and put it verbatim, or, you know, they're taking it from like, you know, the co-op, what they're, you know, we strive to, you know, and they didn't even change the pronouns, or, you know, and put the proper noun in there. So it was
Okay, so,
underwhelming, I couldn't believe, I mean, cause they were good, I mean, we interviewed people, it was a
Right.
national search to get a consultant, and it was really kind of sad.
Resilience, I had a conversation with them, and their final report was almost verbatim what I had talked to them about.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, so I mean, you really needed, I mean, it's really up to us, I think, to write something that's gonna sound like it belongs in Lyme, and, you know, we need to get our neighbors, to help us
Yeah.
verbalize that.
Right, okay.
So you know, all of us can write, and I don't believe we need more. I will say Hanover was a pain because there's 2 census districts. If you Google population town of Hanover, you're gonna get just the census designated place, which is just the downtown, not including Etna, and you have to look to another census tract to get that information, and there's not a lot. In Lyme, you know, I was just trying to find, I could find number of households, they didn't do a count of homes in 2020 for Lyme. So I could get number of households, but that doesn't mean the number of homes you have necessarily.
Interesting, households are family groupings?
They're people, no, they don't have to be families, that's different. So, I mean.
No,
we-
of course not, right.
Yeah, we have to just be careful. I mean, I had to interpolate, when I came up with 11, you know, new houses, you know, cause I was getting 2020 to 2040 data for house, for housing units. But we only had household count for 2020, or something like that, so not number of units. So there are vacancies and, you know, things that are used seasonally, but, so we have to be really careful what we're talking about, because Vital Communities uses something different. They use houses, I believe, so, we just have to be careful.
Yeah,
And there isn't that much, so I think the work you and John did, number of houses that are habitable, is gonna be our, like, that's the real stuff. And with the stuff, but you only count building permits, right?
Right.
So we don't know if those permits are actually built or occupied.
For the most part,
Well,
Yeah, I would
I mean,
think
we
so.
should screen that, because your building permit information is interesting, but only to the extent that it actually results in a occupiable housing unit.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if you know particularly, that they went belly up, or decided they didn't wanna be here in Lyme to settle onto the land, or, you know, that kind of thing. We need to just screen our data
yeah,
if we
there's,
can.
yeah, I wouldn't include anything I've done this year. Last year, you know, there are still houses in progress, and just look up here, there's
Mhm.
one there's one up on Franklin Hill that I'm not sure how far, I think they ran out of money.
Yeah, see, that happens, and
And-
so some of our building permit data doesn't result in actually a house, and if we can go back and think about.
What I can do is,
Yeah.
I always can just pull up the tax card for the, you know, it's like 5 or 6
Yeah.
at the most, so I
Yeah.
can pull up the tax card and see where they're at.
Yep.
Yeah,
And-
eventually it happens.
And then it'd be interesting also to look at, of the houses that were permitted in the past 20 years, how many of them are actually there for year-round occupancy?
That would take quite a bit of time to, because the records prior to me were all Excel spreadsheets, and so having to go through.
Yep,
Yeah,
Yep.
but that's hard, because I think, I mean, some people, you know, they might go somewhere for 2 months in the winter, and is that considered not occupancy?
I would
mean,
consider that that's year-round occupancy. I mean, there's a full person who's living there, but, you know, I guess I'm more interested in is what is actually used, you know, very seasonally, like those people that just come up for the summer, or like, there are people that live at Kendall and
Mhm.
are in their house just in the summer, and I don't know whether they do or they don't rent out their house during the winter. I mean, if so, that's great, cause that's really a year-round occupied
Mhm,
housing
mhm.
unit for Lyme. But, you know, the old census used to have, you know, if it was occupied, if it was vacant, or if it was seasonal.
Mhm.
And we used to have that, but the census doesn't do that anymore. It's too bad because,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, in some cases, you can think about, well, seasonals can always get fixed up and become year-round. And then to understand, like you guys found, some houses really weren't ever gonna be occupied, right? Because they were in such rough shape.
There were a few, I can't remember how many.
Right.
Well, I can think
Yeah.
of two that have been recent that discussed, that are unoccupied, but.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, Brett Ryan has fixed a few of those, I
Mhm.
think, through a couple of, he's
Well, that's
done.
a great service, you know, to have.
You also have to look at, like, on the backside of Post Pond, there are several, you know, Ross McIntyre's camp
Mhm.
is, you know, I'd love to live in a house like that year round, but.
Right, well, it's
But you
seasonal.
gotta use a rowboat
So-
so much.
Right,
of the
exactly.
Yeah, so, you know, we do have some percentage, it's like, you know, like a vacancy rate. There's always gonna be houses where people move out and it hasn't sold yet, so they're vacant.
Mhm.
Or a rental that, you know, the owners are repainting or doing, so for 2
Mhm.
months they're vacant. But, so there's, you know, kind of like a remnant vacancy rate that always exists. But, you know, and I think in the Upper Valley, a lot of the seasonal places have gone to year-round use.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But that's just my impression, but it'd be interesting to
Mhm.
know how much capacity we have in Lyme.
Well, that sounds
Try
like
to
a
use
good
that.
question. I'm writing that down.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, we're
You mean, how many
probably
houses are actually sitting there not being used?
not being used, you know, like, and some of them
Or only
probably
used
are not
couple months.
winterized, so they can't be used. Or, you know, their water supply is
Right.
the pond and it freezes and so they're not gonna have water, so it can't be used, but, you know, is there a potential for, you know, changing things? So, I mean, so we have to be, I think, really clear about our data and what we're counting and what we have, and just be aware that the trend information is not easy to come by because the census stopped counting the same things. We have pretty good data from 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and then after that, it changes. Too bad.
I question the total population that they had for a while. Wasn't it 1,710 or something?
Yeah, it
I
went
mean,
down.
I thought we were about 1,800.
It went down. Yeah, I
I don't
actually.
think it went down. Cause I remember years back, there was a census, and we had almost 1,800 or 1,810
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
And they had 1,710, I mean, I
Yeah.
think was that right, 1,710? I'm trying to
It,
remember.
Yeah, I mean-
it was.
So I just
down
looked at that and I said,
700,
wait
yeah.
a minute, this
No, I
isn't
know,
right.
I know, well, some people just aren't gonna answer, and then they start, well, the other thing is being such a small town, they do a lot of estimating, and, you know, based on, countywide data and countywide trends, and it just doesn't translate well for Lyme, some of those things, cause the whole population estimates that the state puts out are based on job creation in the county. And then they distribute those jobs across the county, and then, you know, and we get so many. And it's just, it's not really a
Right.
great way,
We have to take it with a grain of salt.
right, so their estimates are not that good.
They are squishy. I had the privilege of being a census enumerator
Mm-hmm.
in 2020, and it was interesting, yes, and there's a lot of places on Goose Pond Goose Pond Road that are
Mhm.
seasonal. You
Mhm.
knock on the door, you leave the notice on the door, you drive by another week later, and the notice is still there on the door
Yeah.
because it's a summer camp.
Right,
Yeah, and what's that one on Foothill Road that the nuns own or the
Right.
church owns or whatever?
well, there was somebody living there, it's,
Oh, really?
Benedictine sisters,
Yeah.
yeah, my neighbor.
yeah,
Mhm.
the Wolfers'
Oh, right.
son was living there, I think.
So there is somebody there year round?
No,
No, the Wolfers is a different property, they're not the Benedictines.
No, I know, but their son was living there,
Oh, he's living where?
in the nun's house.
Really?
Just, he was home for college.
This is
something.
Merle Curdy's old house.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, so, yeah,
It's
but,
a neat house.
yeah, they have, like, I think, his sister became a nun, or their aunt was a nun, or there's some family connection.
Yeah, Merle's
Over there.
daughter became a nun
Yeah.
after she had a family and stuff like that.
Mhm. Well, anyway, so that was being used, but it's
Drove her
usually
to
a
the
seasonal
Yeah.
use. When I was living there, they only came up for, a little while, the nuns in the summer. I don't think that house is well insulated. There was a guy who was living there though.
I never see anybody there when I walk
Yeah,
the
Yeah.
area.
yeah.
If
Any-
you know Bob Link, he used to live there.
Yep, yep.
Bob Lee.
Bob
Link.
Link,
Oh,
Link,
Link.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that would be
It's
a
a name I don't recognize. Anyway,
nice
so-
River Watershed Council.
how do we wanna proceed?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've got, I think, Vicky's idea of setting some goals, trying to come up with a few goals is a great idea.
Yeah, maybe with these comments that people did, we can
And
put them together.
I know one of the things I was curious about is, what kind of responsibility, I think one of the questions we are gonna have is what kind of responsibility do we think Lyme should have for, making up or participating in, the projected deficit of housing.
Mhm.
And I was actually surprised, at the 11 new units that you pulled out of Keys of the Valley. I looked at that and
Well, that's the
that
problem with
study-
housing units and households.
Yeah.
That's
Oh.
where that came from. So I was interpolating,
Well, a
So
housing
unit-
unit is where,
X number of people live, right?
a unit of people live, right? Whether it's 3 college students, or it's
yes.
a single person, or a family of 6.
There was, well, if you're counting structures with, potential
Mhm.
living is different than a household that's occupying. So that's like an owner-occupied house structure would be a
Mhm.
household.
Mhm.
So, how many houses is a different thing. So to create housing that's used seasonally or is kept vacant, they only come here for Dartmouth graduation.
Well, that's not really our problem.
I understand, but if that's what the use is, then it is our problem, because it's not housing people that we're trying to provide housing for people. That's part of the regional responsibility, it's not creating a structure that's gonna stand vacant. So that's what I
Mhm.
kind of see, so,
Hmm.
yeah, but, so this was 11 housing units, that would be occupied, based on their thinking about how much population we're gonna have.
Mhm.
So how are we doing on that? We're 4/10 of the way through that. Or
Well,
3/10
Well, we end up,
of that 10-year period.
yeah,
I think we're on track,
I
right?
think so.
I was
yeah.
like looking at the building permit information that you had generated, and it's not so bad, but they don't put very much burden on Lyme because we don't have, water and sewer,
Right.
and, don't have the ability to have multifamily housing. And we're not located in one of the core towns that provide employment, so they don't expect us to have that much, which is kind of refreshing. And
Yeah.
the number that they generated for Hanover seemed like a lot, but it's like 800 units, but it's actually attainable. I mean, that's something that could be done,
Did that
and
include students though?
it includes whoever the population is that needs to be housed.
But it doesn't include the college dorms, right?
We don't build, we
No,
don't,
so it's only-
it's to
yeah.
house people, but college dorms are now being configured like apartment units, so, that could help, meet that.
Because they wouldn't be
Yeah.
renting somewhere else.
right,
the kids would.
right,
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So Vicky, I wanna go back to your number of 11, because
Mhm.
I've looked at the Keys to the Valley report.
Yep.
And their table 5.1 shows that Lyme should have, by 2030, should have 98. You know, so the table is labeled targets for new housing production,
Mhm.
and it says 98. This is housing needs. New housing includes new construction and renovation of existing structures in addition, in an added housing units. And so I see, 98 by 2030, and that's,
Okay,
and
well,
so,
I'm
I
gonna go
mean, I'm
back
looking at
to,
page 69 of
Okay.
that,
What table was that, Rich?
5.1.
Okay.
all right, so can we not, I mean, that number can be left as an X and let,
Sure,
and
I mean,
I'll go
so-
back to where I was.
Okay, and, you know, maybe I'm not reading this right.
Yep.
I mean, and so
Okay,
this,
yeah, but
I
I mean,
wanna say, Rich, as the chair, I do not intend to be argumentative here, but I will ask for precision and I will
Yes.
ask for clarification.
Yes.
So,
yes.
I just wanna.
But I think that what we can say is, for some reason, we think that there's a goal of supporting our kind of regional fair share,
Mhm.
whatever number that
Right.
is.
Mhm.
And Rich Mengy had some good verbiage on that, and so did, I thought, Nat. Because he said we should be doing it in sync with our schools, right? Or who said that? That was a
That was
different.
Rich, I think.
It was Rich, okay, Rich Mengy said that, yes.
Yeah.
So I think that there should be a goal that is like that, that talks about, Nat talked about not overdoing the school.
Right,
And Rich said to keep our school open, right?
Well, no, it was to not have to expand it,
Right. And
Yes,
and Vicky,
yes,
I was,
yeah.
because we really are in a tough spot if we have to expand our school, I suspect.
We're in a tough spot anyway, with just having to keep it for what it is now.
Yeah.
But yeah,
right.
yeah, so let's have one goal that's like that, and I like
And
some
what I
of
would-
the verbiage that Rich put in.
I was thinking, if the board would agree, I was thinking that I was gonna go sit down with Don Termon
Mhm.
and ask him,
Who?
the new.
John
Duntermon's
the
the
new
principal.
Oh, okay.
And ask him what he thought, or his ideas on how many kids we could expand without needing a new school. Cause I remember when Jeff Valens came here, 4 years ago?
Mhm.
And he told us, cause he came in, we asked him to come in and talk to us, he told us that at that point, he thought we could expand 15%, 15% more kids if they were sort of divided equally among the classes.
Mhm.
And it would be interesting to see what the new principal thinks and, how many more kids he thinks we could have without. Yeah, because my understanding is they have no room to expand, the school can't go out any, so unless they went up,
Mhm.
they would have to almost build a new school somewhere, which would be millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, the structure made
Yeah.
to support the weight of going up.
Yeah, so maybe they can't go up, so then,
Right, and just for quick numbers, the engineers and architects that they had come in to talk about the school said to replace that school is, you should have $8 to $10 million in mind.
plus land.
Oh, well, yeah, but
Plus land.
just rebuilding the school, I mean, that's the kind of number that, it's not like, well,
Oh, at
it's
least.
$2.6 million that we're gonna put in to the school now, and if we tore the thing down, we could rebuild it for 3. Oh,
Well,
but it's
Yeah.
clearly not.
Yeah,
It's-
so,
it's-
so when Rivendell is consolidating and they have room for more,
Right,
it just doesn't make sense to me for us to expand if we can send some of our kids to Hanover or some of our kids north.
I wouldn't wish that on any kid going to that school district, having
Some,
a child going through that, gone
some
through that
parents
district.
prefer it, and I mean, that's the
Mhm.
thing, but,
Well,
you
a lot
know,
of people are
it,
leaving. Our neighbors are selling their house and getting out of Warford.
oh, are they?
They've got 2 kids in school and they're.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, well, see, I think, I mean, I know a little bit about it, cause I talked to, anyway, I think Orford needs to get out of Rivendell completely. Just go back, you know.
To be in New Hampshire.
Yeah, and what they should do to really save money is do exactly what Lyme does. Have a good elementary school and tuition their high school kids out.
Mhm.
That would save them a huge amount.
Well,
Anyway,
I wonder if my first one and Rich's first one is really the same, and then I would say Rich's second one is kind of like a strategy about how we're going to increase the housing stock, so that would be like a supporting strategy to that goal. So we wanna get those numbers, but we wanna do it in a manner that's consistent with the school system. So that's a strategy of like how we do this without upsetting the town financially,
right.
okay?
So,
So his would be like a 1A, that would be a strategy. And
So do you want me to talk to the principal?
I think that we should have, I think everybody in town should know what his views are.
Okay.
And it's not, yeah, and I guess in here, if the capacity of the school system is 0, I mean, to increase.
I don't think it's 0.
Okay, well, I guess that's important for us to know, but,
Well, I'll sit down with him. I'll
okay,
see what-
great.
So do we wanna, I mean, toward that end, maybe we should like look around and see if there's other questions to ask the school at the same time instead of,
Well, we're only gonna focus on housing and that, right? We're not gonna say where should the school go? Or,
right,
you know,
right,
new, like,
well,
village or
okay.
anything like that, so,
So maybe we should just make a list of questions for Tim and if
Yep.
it's,
yep,
I mean, cause he doesn't wanna get visitations multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah.
basically we
Do you
just
know
wanna
him?
know, I've met him once, I
Okay.
don't know.
Okay.
But I think basically we just wanna know what he thinks, how many more kids
Right.
we could put in school. But yeah, if there's other things too, I say.
Well, how is it that, that it doesn't seem like there's been a concern about this? I mean, that was one of the questions that came up during this recent school bond issue. And I think it was the superintendent,
Yeah.
is that the same as the principal?
No, there's two different people.
So, he seemed to indicate that they weren't worried about it at all, because that was one of the questions, if we spend this 2 million plus
Mhm.
on,
Right.
improving it, are we gonna, in 5 years, gonna be coming back and saying, well, we need to build an addition to the school?
Right, well, see, if you look at the population of the elementary school, it's stayed pretty steady over the last, 12 years or more.
Well,
I mean,
it's
it goes up
actually
and down.
decreasing. It-
Yeah,
Well,
that's
it
what
goes
I
up-
understood, is it's
Consistently
actually going down.
decreasing it.
Yeah, it goes
Yeah.
up and down, but it's,
Yeah.
basically, it's been pretty close. And that's because we haven't had that many people moving into town.
Well, I think,
Um,
yeah, right.
Is
There'll be a
Crossroads
turnover.
taking up some of the slack, or? is
Probably,
it-
yeah.
there's probably a few kids from Lyme, but they really draw regionally.
Yeah.
Kids
Yeah,
come from a long way to go to
Crossroads is
Crossroads.
Right.
Mostly.
I know a lot of them come
Yeah.
from south of my
Yeah.
house.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, so, well, going back to that, okay, so let's start a list for Tim, and then I think that Rich's number 3 is like a number 2 kind of goal, because that has to do with the energy, you know, that we really wanna promote, having energy conserving, housing. That's like a second goal, it's different from increasing the housing that we have, it's like, this is about the housing, that we want it to be energy efficient.
You mean the
And you know,
insulation.
it's such a difficult thing if we're thinking that we wanna keep housing or try to get some stock of housing that's less expensive. People have a hard time putting value on energy conservation, because you either pay now or you pay later,
Right,
and they
right.
wanna,
Right.
they
Yep.
wanna pay as little
Yep,
now as
yep,
possible.
yep.
Um,
Well, it should be
But-
that we really encourage it and make it easier to happen, and it doesn't mean that this just goes for the new stock. I mean, doing more weatherize,
Oh, yeah.
you know, projects, getting the Boy Scouts out to help a person do insulating, or, you know, Norwich does the, they make those, plastic for, you know, inserts for
Interior
windows.
window.
To, you know, where people don't have storm windows and things,
Yeah.
so it's doing little things like that that can make a
Absolutely.
difference for
It adds
people.
up, it adds up.
And, you know, I don't know, I mean, in Hanover, there's a sustainable Hanover group that tends to, you know, keep urging those things, so it's kind of ongoing. And, we don't really have people in town that do that, and maybe that's it. We tried to start a weatherization group. I know they were doing it through CCL, right?
CCL, I think the Energy Committee for a while was also
Right,
helping.
but we should make sure that that keeps on going. So a strategy here is that we have, you know, someone in town who's working on weatherization, you know, it goes house by house by house. And, you know, just, you do one a year where a person can save a lot of money, that makes a big difference. And I know there's the Woodard Fix-It Fund now that helps people with their cars and I think home repairs. And it's a certain amount of money that I think they only can afford to do one award a year. But even if it was like fixing somebody to get a more energy efficient boiler or something like that, that would, you know, be huge, and that goes with the house. So,
Yeah,
there are a
that's
lot
good
of
idea.
different strategies we can, you know, kind of brainstorm once we get our goals set up.
That's a good idea. I mean, I think new construction, we can certainly try to influence a contractor, what they're gonna do, what they.
Well, I mean, look at Ray, I think he had every intention, you know, to do really energy efficient lead and all that for his condos, and he got stuck with the realities of how expensive everything is, yeah. But, and Tim, I think your first one, convince homeowners to produce and rent out accessory dwelling units on their properties, that should be a strategy that supports that first goal that Rich Mengy had, right? So
Because
that,
I personally think ADUs are a great way to go.
Yeah.
You know, as far as an older couple that wants to downsize, they can put an ADU on their property and live in that and rent their house or,
yeah,
you know, whatever,
well,
so.
I
remember,
think one of
nobody
the problems though
thinks
is that the real big problem is lack of sewer and water, and so you have to, you know, that is a huge increase in cost to, you know, have to put in a new septic system to support the ADU,
Right.
and I don't know any way around that. You know,
Right.
Right.
Connecting to the well, that's not too bad, but the, you know,
Septic.
the septic is, you know, huge.
And that's, I mean, one of the things that I wrote down, you know, what's the planning board strategy for encouraging that? I mean, there's nothing we can do to make septic systems bigger or cheaper or anything like that. It's clear we can look and say, are there things that are in our control that prevent people from making an ADU? You know, and I have specific things there, but, there's, you know, if people don't wanna cut their house up.
well, it's like,
into
yeah,
mulch.
Jennifer Cook, we asked her, well, what about that? And she came to one of our housing things, and she says, well, I don't really want that.
Right.
And it's like,
Okay,
okay, well,
good.
that's fine,
I
but, you
mean,
know,
that's-
but the fact that she doesn't want it doesn't mean somebody else won't
Right.
want to do that. And
That's-
so what we need
I
to do
totally
is to be
agree.
able to facilitate that if there is a person. And our whole thing with, you know, conversion of homes around Lyme Common, that's what that anticipated, was
Mhm.
to, big houses, no one can afford to live in a big old drafty house, and so if you could convert it into units,
Right.
then, you
Yep.
know, that would
Right,
help.
and
Right.
that's a really good, I mean, people don't do it very often, but that's incredibly permissive. I mean, I think that that's one of the good things in the
The
Lyme
ADU
ordinance.
thing, yeah.
And there are things we could do to make ADUs even easier, but,
And we might wanna
we-
think about, we could think about increasing the size from 750.
yes,
I mean,
that's one of the
I don't
things.
think that would be a bad thing.
And that's one of the things that turns people off. You know, they see 750 and, again, a lot of people don't have a concept of
Yeah.
Square
size.
footage, yeah.
I mean,
And
that's,
so-
that's certainly big enough for even two people to live in. but
It's tight
not-
for two people, I can
it's-
tell you,
it's
because
tight.
I'm at 1,100 square feet, and
But you like to spread out.
Yeah, well,
Well, it depends on what stage of life you're at too, you
Yeah.
know, when you get our age, we've got a lot of stuff.
yeah, we
Right.
do. It's very
Whereas somebody
meaningful.
who's 24, yes, exactly, it's meaningful stuff.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and so when you're 30 years old, you don't have quite that much
Right.
baggage.
But remember when we had you weren't here then, I don't think, but we had that woman say, well, like, what's wrong? Why don't millennials wanna, come to Lyme? Or what's the problem with
The
housing?
real
stock?
estate agent,
And they
yeah.
said that, they need storage space for their toys. Cause they've got the stand-up paddleboard, they get the bicycle, they have all their skis, and, the kayak. And that a
Yeah.
lot of the rentals, the ADUs, don't come with that kind of extra storage. And so, I mean, maybe that means we need to be sure that, that's accommodated. Of course, the other thing was that no cell coverage.
Right, well,
And
she,
we
I
did-
remember her saying, she said, the first thing they do
Yeah.
when I take a young couple to the house, they get out of the car, they put their phone up. And if they don't get good service, they get back in the car and that's it,
Yeah.
they leave.
Yeah.
Of course, it's better now probably than it was then.
The cell coverage?
Hardly.
No.
I don't think so.
I think, we have internet, but that's,
Yeah,
thanks
They
to
did
Lyme
put, there's a
fiber.
cell tower in Thetford now that gives Lyme a little bit more coverage, but not.
Right,
Right.
And again, the biggest problem with cell coverage is that the cell companies spend a lot of time actually dialing back their coverage areas for each tower, because these little things, every time you connect to their tower, it's checking your email, it's checking your Facebook, it's checking your Instagram. And so the amount of data needed overwhelms the cell towers.
Oh.
And so what they've done is they've backed off the coverage areas
Mhm.
so that their towers can handle the amount of
Oh,
usage. And so,
Interesting.
that's why, a lot of people complain that I used to have service and now I don't.
Right,
That's because they've
Right.
dialed back
right,
the
The range.
range on the towers because they can't handle the bandwidth with all the smartphones.
yep.
And why aren't there cell, stuff inside the bell tower of the church?
Because nobody has wanted to do it. It's
Right.
not financially viable for,
The cell
For the cell company?
yep, I've tried several times talking with, actually almost had a company interested in putting one just to the north, on Danny Green's property.
Mhm.
And, that would have given coverage for all of downtown Lyme. And the biggest issue they had is because they're so close to the Vermont border, you have to deal with both, states.
Oh, for permit?
Yep. For permitting, so, and
Hmm.
then, the state of Vermont says, well, we got a tower right here in Fairleigh, there's overlap there, we don't need it. So, we're not gonna support it. And
Hmm.
I guess,
Okay.
so as a,
So for the ADUs, I think that what we might wanna do is talk about that. Do you have that in your list, Rich, because you had a lot of really kind of specific things, I was just going down here, but.
yeah, so actually, I'd like to convert two of the things, the questions that I asked, to goals. One is that our ordinance should allow multiple places for kids, children who grew up in Lyme, to move back to town. So,
I don't think
I don't
that's
think that's
appropriate.
so
gonna happen.
I'm gonna put it out as a goal, and actually, if we wanna have a discussion, is
That's an arch-
that a worthy goal? I mean, I think that's an interesting discussion.
Well, everybody wants their kids around, but guess what, the thriving is all about getting a job, right?
Well,
Unless you're
okay.
gonna support them, I mean, you
So,
bringing them into.
no, I am.
They can live in your ADU.
Yeah, so
I know.
the hypothesis that I'm throwing out is, so you grow up in Lyme, you go away to college, you get a good job at Big Green or at DH or something like that, a decent job, I mean, a good,
Mhm.
well-paying job. Should our ordinance make it so that there's housing that you can move back to on somebody making 65, 70, 75,000? So I guess that's where I'm going with that
Well,
question.
okay, so it's, you need to take away our children and just say somebody who's making $75,000,
Okay.
okay?
All right,
So.
all right, I
But
accept
I
that.
will say, there's so many kids, I mean, you know, who bought Adair's house is a kid who grew up in Lyme.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know another
Yeah.
Sure,
kid that.
right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a
But-
lot of kids that are around, I mean, Julie Hewitt's here,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
you know,
And,
well, and the, her
and
sister's
could they
living
do it
over
on
in
their
Norwich.
own, or are they getting, you know, parental help? I mean, I don't wanna know the details of those specific things, but I think to say, you know, somebody hot out of college, can they find a place to live?
I would posit, what kids do you know that live anywhere in the US haven't had help from their parents if they are homeowners? Do you know any children that have bought a house on their own?
It's hard.
Yeah, I mean.
Yes, I do.
You do, okay,
Yep.
okay.
I mean-
Is it one or?
One of two
Uh-huh.
that's in the
Yeah.
home buying.
Yeah, yeah, I mean,
They have their
I
own
think
trust
every
fund.
kid is having a hard
Yeah.
time doing
But-
that, and, yeah,
but-
but anyway,
But
yes.
can,
Yeah, so people, so
could
who
there be
changes?
small units, you know, I mean,
Well, I think, Rich, isn't it
Yeah.
30, don't they say that it should be 30%
right,
or less of your income
Of
spent on
income.
housing?
on the total bundle of housing, yes.
Yeah.
So,
that's sort
your
of the cutoff.
utilities, I mean, and
Mortgage.
some places say 33, and, you know, but it's surely not, if it's 50%, that's too much.
And you're never-
I don't think that's too much.
Yeah, no, if,
I think 50, I think if you're just starting out, you're gonna have to spend more than 30%.
Well, but the
I mean-
national goal, you know, what you
Right.
read is, they say 30.
So-
Yeah,
about
but I mean,
30%.
when I was driving in, I was listening to, you know, something on the radio that was talking about a waiter in New York, in Manhattan, working 10 hours a week, making $16 an hour. And he's complaining because he can't find a place to live. Well, duh.
10 hours a week?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, well.
And then, you know, in the wintertime, he works, he's able to find work for 30 hours or something crazy, but, I mean, it's.
So,
I think it's a,
the challenge that I intend to throw down, and I accept your suggestion.
Okay, so
that
it's
you can
like
take out
people
the
who
kid.
make $75,000.
Pick,
Well, I don't know, but it'd be good to get, didn't we talk about how much a teacher in Lyme makes? Isn't
Yes,
that
and-
what
and
we thought of
a
was?
fairly senior teacher is in the 70 to 80, I think is what he said last time.
Okay,
So, I mean, those are the kinds of numbers.
is that
Those are-
okay for you? I
That-
mean,
that-
is that a good proxy for our children?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Is
it's,
a good job at the hospital, you get paid that much? Is that,
well,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think
we
it
can look
is.
at the median income and all. The Keys to the Valley report had tons of that kind of data. So I think X dollars,
Mhm.
I would absolutely accept X dollars.
okay,
And,
movement, okay,
um,
all right.
or would we just relate it to a statistic, like median income or something?
We'll bat that number around.
Okay,
I mean,
so I think that that's kind of what I was getting at with both attainable and affordable. Because affordable is usually assisted housing.
Right.
And attainable is for your typical working Joe,
Mhm.
you know, like a teacher in Lyme.
Right.
You know, what would it take, and that's kind of like your
That's
$75,000 house.
the attainable
That's the
piece.
attainable
I
piece,
I
yes.
just learned that
Yeah.
word the
Yeah.
other week, so that, I
Yeah,
like
so
that.
and attainable is, you know, is I think a better, affordable is affordable because it's funded that way and there's,
Right.
you know, but attainable, I think is, we can define attainable as your 75,000
We
or
can pick a
that.
number and say that,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
right.
So
And
that's the same kind of,
And then maybe
goal
30%
is mine.
of that would be a rough idea.
of what you would pay for your housing, yeah.
Yeah, 30% of 75,000.
Okay.
Well,
And so what
it's-
is it that
Well,
we're,
no, it's of your mortgage. No, this
But I
is
mean-
like your annual housing cost, so you take your mortgage,
Right.
your taxes, your
Right,
insurance,
right.
and your, Yeah.
Utilities maybe?
and your, well, utilities, yeah, but, yeah,
Yep. So, I mean,
Yeah,
there,
so it's the whole
that's
housing
the bundle of
package.
expenses that
Yeah.
you need for housing, as opposed to transportation to work, as opposed to
Right,
food, as opposed
right.
to, and
And that's,
that
they say it should be
should be
30% or
30%
less of
something
your
like
gross
30,
income.
yes.
That's your
Yeah.
gross.
And that's what I think what banks lend on. I mean, it's not just
Yeah,
a random number, I think that that's what the bank, when you bring your budget to the bank, when you're getting your first mortgage, they wanna know that you're gonna have, you know, money to pay your school loans and, you know, to pay for your health insurance
Right.
and your car and blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
they just wanna make
So-
sure you can pay your mortgage,
Yeah,
that's all they.
but there's also now, they've been, coming up with a percentage of your income that would include both your residential costs
Mhm.
and your transportation costs.
Hmm.
And that's where, like, this area is seen as having a huge deficit, because you live out in Dorchester, your housing cost is not that much, but your transportation costs are huge. And, there's actually a calculus that you use for that, but I think in Lyme, we don't really have that as badly, because most people are commuting less than half an hour down to the kind of core communities, for their work, so it's not that bad.
So that, my first request was, I think,
Yep, so
attainable.
let's use that for attainable, yep.
Yep, and then the second is for people to downsize into town.
So you want to do some sort of it's like an aging in place, but it's aging in town. So they're not necessarily having to leave, they could divide their own home, or they could find a smaller unit somewhere in
Right,
town.
I mean, they just don't wanna deal with, you know, they're up on, I mean, you know all the names that I do too, people that have moved out of town. Because they go to Kendall, they go north, they go to different towns, because they can't find a place
Right.
in Lyme. They've only lived here for 20 or 30 years, been valuable members of the town, often served in town committees, and they have to leave. And that, because they tell me they can't find a place that they can live in Lyme. So, that's,
Unless they wanted to do
Well, I
a separate
mean,
ADU, they could do a separate ADU on their property.
Their own property.
Yeah.
yeah.
And
but
85 Dartmouth College Highway does help too, because I've known, well, we all know several people have moved
Sure.
to 85 Dartmouth
Right.
College. But there's not that many units there. So.
There's not that, and
They're
there's no
expensive.
vacancies. There's no vacancies.
Well, right, then one comes on the market and it goes in like 2
Right.
weeks, yeah.
So, I mean, that's,
But everything goes in 2
Right,
weeks,
that's
so, I
true.
mean,
well, because there's not enough. I mean, this is,
well,
No.
I don't think it's our responsibility to solve all of the Upper Valley's housing and to,
And there's this huge premium on the value of property in Lyme. I mean,
Yeah.
I was just shopping for rental units, and if you go to Orford or you go to Etna, the price on a, you know, on a house here that sells for $650,000 sells for $400,000 there.
Right.
And you're not gonna solve that by building housing units here.
No.
The demand is too inelastic. You're never gonna be able to build enough. The only way you solve that is to make living in Lyme undesirable, and that's,
yeah, that's not, I don't think that's our
Right.
goal.
You know, and-
That's not my goal.
Right, it's interesting, because if Orford ever did do what Lyme does, I can just see that town changing dramatically. You know, if they sent tuition to kids out wherever they wanted to go, Orford would just be really desirable at that point, it would change so much.
well, it's a little bit further away. I think
Yeah.
Lyme has a premium because it's viewed as a suburb of Hanover.
Well, that's true.
I think that
Still-
doctors have to be within a certain number of minutes to commute, and so I think Orford is too far
Yeah,
Well,
to
they
be
used to-
within that.
doctors
I
and
don't
also,
think that's true anymore.
Oh, it's
Ye-
not?
Years
College
ago it
people
was,
and-
but I think doctors can live pretty much forever now. Because I know there was a doctor living in Peachum,
Mhm.
surgeon, and he had a dairy farm up there, he was living in Peachum.
Well, he probably worked one day a week doing gallbladders or something like that,
Probably.
but,
But,
you know,
no,
but,
I think that that's less of a constraint. I mean,
Yeah.
I have not heard anybody,
okay.
my wife mentioned that if anybody recently,
Mhm.
but,
It
you
was
know,
true, in the 70s, they had to be within 12 miles of the, because when I worked in the
Okay.
hospital in the 70s, they had to be
Yeah.
within 12 miles.
So,
So a goal, what you've written, how can our ordinance help long-time downsize? What is the goal there, to make more small units available in Lyme?
I think so, I think,
Well, I don't wanna put, but
Yeah.
what is the goal?
so yes, there should be, the town should, ordinance should should allow.
Now, what's our goal? Not the ordinance, cause it might be that
Okay,
we develop
yes.
a old-time Lyme's housing trust, and some of us only sell our houses to the old-time Limey trust, who only allows old-time Limeys to downsize to those places.
Sure.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be our ordinance, but what's the goal?
Okay, the goal is that we should make, let's see, we should make a lot of housing available, make housing available for people that wanna downsize.
So,
And,
okay, so for
Yeah.
people wanna downsize, so does this mean, I mean, what if I wanted to downsize? I'm gonna,
yeah, I
so-
mean, I know
so-
you're in a small unit, but
Okay.
if you decided that my unit is too big,
Mhm.
and I don't wanna live here anymore, or
So you want smaller units, I mean.
smaller units, and I think, I don't know if it's a separate thing, someplace where somebody manages the ground, somebody that plows my driveway, that shovels my walks, that mows the
So-
grass,
Right,
does
so
that.
I don't wanna be impolite here.
Go ahead.
But I want you to articulate whether or not, to express to us whether or not you have a personal interest in
So-
any of this. Because I don't know you well, but I know that you've
Yes,
condominiumized some of your property and you're developing smaller units. So if you have a personal interest, at the very least, you should disclose that to the board.
yes, that is a fair question, and, people who have been on this board for a long time know that, I think congregate housing is a really good idea. I think that, there are a lot of people who are very interested in having, a place where they don't have to do all the work. And so,
I'm not interested in whether it's a good
Okay.
idea or not,
So-
that's something that we
and-
can debate for a policy perspective. But what I'd like to get on the table is, look, if I'm proposing something to this board and it's making me money,
yes.
you know,
okay, all right.
I'm gonna be economically enriched as a result of what I'm proposing, then I feel like I have an obligation to
Okay.
sort of put that out there. It creates a conflict of interest, and so that's what I'd like to suss out.
That's yes, you are right. Would I develop such a thing if it were permitted in Lyme? Probably would. The third goal that I was gonna put in is how does Lyme should comport with the workforce housing laws in Lyme, of the state of New Hampshire. So-
Okay,
So that's
an
jumping
addition,
a separate
okay.
topic, but
Okay.
I think workforce housing, the ability to build new workforce housing compatible units would in large measure satisfy any personal goals I have for different living options.
Okay, but hold it, workforce housing is different than Lyme residents downsizing.
It is, I'm
So-
sorry.
So it's different,
Yes.
okay, all right,
And
so.
David's correct to ask me to declare my concerns.
Mhm.
I do think people should be able, I do think it would be good to allow smaller units to be built. And to allow groups of units to be close together, because I think it is both something that's interesting for people that do wanna downsize, as well as people that just wanna move to town and don't wanna deal with all the hassles of home maintenance.
Sort of
Okay,
like condominium.
They would probably be
I mean, that's
condominiums
what
or
Ray's
apartments.
got
Yes.
that exactly there.
Right.
Yeah, a
So,
condominium association.
I heard in this tonight that our ADUs should be bigger and that we should allow more smaller units.
Mhm.
So, what do you mean by smaller then? Because, just like,
There's nothing restricting somebody from building a 1,500 square foot house, if that's.
Yes, there
considered
is.
small.
It's the economics of the world mitigate against a 1,500 square foot house. There are currently 2 parcels for sale on Zillow right now. both of which are, one of which is about $150,000, the other is a skosh over $200,000 for the bare land, which appears to be large enough to build a unit.
Yeah, by unit, you mean,
Some, to build
A house,
something,
a
a
house.
house, I
Yeah.
mean, they're
Yeah.
either slightly more than 5 acres, or the other was about 7, I don't remember the details. If you're gonna start with a piece of land that's $150,000 or $200,000, and then you're gonna build, a 1,000 square foot home is gonna come in $250,000 worth of, value, of materials to build the house. You're at, 400 or 450, 500 for a buildable lot plus building the house. And I actually didn't include the infrastructure, the driveway, the water, the septic, and that kind of stuff. So the economics make it absolutely infeasible to build a 1,500 square foot house.
No, it does, well, if you're a developer, yes. If you're like somebody who's wanting to have a small house, that's not true. You can
But-
build a small house and.
But
Flip
you
it to
can't
somebody.
sell it, but you
Sure
can't
you
get your
can.
money
Oh,
out
you
when you
certainly
sell it.
can. There are
Yeah.
lots of people who don't want big houses, and the
Mhm.
person who, you know, you sell it to might build a McMansion right next door, and that's the ADU or something. Or they put an addition on it, so that's not true. So, I.
I mean, I think you're arguing against yourself, because you're saying we need more small houses, but then you're saying, well, if you build one, you
It's not
can't sell it.
economical.
No, I'm, actually, the place I'm going is, my third request to make the ordinance comport with the workforce housing law, which requires the ability to economically build multi-unit, housing, 5 or more units in a building. So that's New Hampshire law, I'm paraphrasing slightly, but,
so you're saying, yeah, what you're saying, I think, Rich, is that you need a fair number of units to make it financially
oh,
feasible.
by the way, yes,
And I don't
mean,
think
if you can spread
five,
those,
I don't think 5 is enough either. I mean, to really make it, I mean, if a big company's gonna build a apartment house, I think they need
Well,
25 units or more to really make it, feasible.
Well, and they're not gonna, I mean, they'd have to build a wastewater treatment plant for 25
Right.
units. So that's
Mhm.
not happening, that's why, we don't have,
so
Development like
there
that.
there is an entity in town, I mean, I'm a principal, that came to the planning board and asked to build 25 units. And let's see, I guess the kindest thing to say is that the planning board said it was clearly against the current Lyme ordinance and absolutely did not support it. And was not willing to consider any changes to the ordinance. And
Well,
so,
But we had changes and the town voted it down, right?
Yes.
yeah, so it's not just the planning
well,
board.
it was,
It's like
well, the planning board, I don't remember the vote, but it was strongly did not recommend the petitioned amendment.
No,
Okay,
there was
so-
there was one amendment that the board did support, and it got shot down.
Yeah,
Was
well,
that
I'm
the
gonna
lot size
say that
averaging?
we're not building
Everything.
25 units at a whack, on a single site in
So
this
tell
town
me,
because
tell
it's,
me why, Vicki.
why?
Mhm.
Because I believe that the scale is wrong.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
I think that if you were gonna put in very tiny units,
Mhm.
where you wouldn't have families, and you would only have 1 or 2 people living in each, that would be fine. And I'm not anti-children, I have had 3 here in this
Mhm.
community. But I do believe that the scale is wrong. And, I also wish we had a wastewater treatment plant where, that would enable, it'd be very
Mhm.
easy. We don't have enforcement in this community that looks after stuff. And, I walk by a lot of homes in my old neighborhood
Mhm.
and in my current neighborhood where I smell septic every spring, and, you know, so I'm a little concerned about getting larger systems that might need to be overseen and won't be taken care of.
And also, Rich, if you're a principal in an entity that is trying to do a project, and that project stands to benefit you economically, you have a conflict of interest with respect to this committee, and you can't come in here, it seems to me, if I were in that position, I would say I have to abstain from debating on this point, because I have a personal interest that doesn't necessarily align with that of the committee. Now, I don't know if you could put your personal interest aside, you know, but it creates an actual conflict of interest that is, it seems to me, problematic. You know, if I were wanting to build multi-million-dollar giant mansions in Lyme, and I come in as a member of the planning committee, and I'm militating to get changes in the zoning law that allows me to do that, and if that change occurs, it benefits me because I can now build the projects that I have planned. That's a conflict of interest. You can't, I think that's a problem. You gotta, I don't know if you follow the select board, so you see whenever something comes up that's relates to Crossroads where I'm a board member, I step out of the room.
Absolutely.
Whenever something comes up with respect to Killen Bear Center where I'm a board member, I step out because that creates a conflict. And I think you have, at least, I don't know you very well, and I don't know your business and, you know, goals or what you're doing very well. I just know little stuff on the periphery, but from what you've said today and from what I understand, it seems to me that you have at least a potential conflict of interest that creates a problem with respect to your militating for the kind of changes you're talking about here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I think in a matter where I actually had decision authority, for example, I have an application before the board, I have to sit over there. No kidding, I have to recuse myself, where the board is being asked to make a decision on a project in which I have any kind of interest. I have to recuse myself. When I went to this workshop from the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and they talk about that one of the things they specifically say is that as a member of a planning board, it is absolutely appropriate to have someone named a developer, because they have insights into the process, which not everyone understands, the costs involved, the other details, those sorts of things. And so I will encourage this group to question me closely if I seem, I do believe housing is a critical thing. I do believe small congregate units is a sensible thing to do, and this is not a wacko.
To be clear,
thought.
I'm not,
Right, so
I have no view on the substance of that. In fact, I would probably agree with you, but.
So I will ask you to say, Rich, are you, if we're coming down to the final strokes here, and we're saying, is there anything that you are advocating that is specifically beneficial to you? Or, and call me out, say, but if it's, we ought to be able to build condos and apartments, I don't think that's
Perhaps, yeah.
that's nothing that would be specifically beneficial to any interests I have.
Okay.
Okay, so we do have condos and we do have apartments, so,
And so my third point is, how do we address the requirement in New Hampshire law that requires construction, especially financial ability to construct new multi-unit buildings, which are not allowed in the Lyme ordinance?
I can't answer that
So that's the strategy goal that I throw out to the group.
Okay, can you write that down, because, it's not in your list?
Yes, I didn't print it out,
Well,
but
you
yes.
didn't, you sent it kind of late for us all,
I did,
so.
and it's not in that.
I understand it's
list.
not, I'm looking at it right now,
Um,
but it'd be good if you can try to get in with everybody else's so we can work off the same list and not
Yes,
have to.
thank you.
And I don't think that it's wrong to bring up things that you might not have thought of, so I'm happy that you
Yep.
brought that up.
But I think ultimately, whatever we do,
Mhm.
propose, it really is up to the town. It seems like it's up to the town. I mean, I firmly believe in democracy as far as, you know,
Mhm.
the town should really decide what they want.
But this doesn't go to town meeting,
Master plan does not go to
Yeah,
town
it
meeting.
No,
goes
but I
to-
meant
It's
questionnaire, you
Yeah.
know, questionnaires and stuff.
We're not going to, we're gonna send them something. Does this sound like your vision for the
Right,
future?
but that's what I
And we're
mean,
gonna
the
ask
town
them,
is gonna decide.
yes, no, you forgot this, you want to take out that. We're gonna send them something that's concrete and not, you know, how do you feel about housing? We're not doing that.
Right.
We send them,
I
we're
agree.
gonna dress up this
It'd
list.
be fun to read the responses.
That would
to
be,
that.
like, I like to
Or
go
you'll
home.
get to anyway.
Love my house, but I wish I didn't have to clean it, right? But I'm happy to have a house to clean, you know, even though I
Right.
don't wanna clean it.
Mhm.
Okay, okay, and I'm just looking at the rest of yours here, the long time, so we're gonna do that into smaller
Mhm.
units. Dimensional controls, that is an implementation thing that I think we're gonna have to do.
I'll accept that, yes.
And then this other one, how do we minimize the distance people must drive for everyday needs? I mean, that has nothing to do with housing, it's got a lot to do with the types of businesses that can actually
Mhm.
make a go of it here in Lyme, because we don't have that many people. I mean, you look at Hanover's having the same thing, there's real
Mhm.
estate agents, there's banks, there's restaurants,
Right.
and there's no retail. I mean, I looked at your blog and all
Yeah.
the list of things.
Right.
And, you know what, if it made economical sense for somebody to have that here,
Mhm.
they would have
It
it.
seems like that's a area-wide, because, you know, now that I'm having to go through Fairleigh every day, I'm noticing more and more all the retail businesses
Mhm.
are closing, and,
Except in Fairleigh's getting more retail
Yeah.
business, I wanna understand that.
well, but you look at a lot of the retail places, we got one building that was retail, the gas station.
Yeah, the gas station, but that's
That's-
gonna become retail again.
But that hasn't changed. But you look, there was a, building,
Right, the third rail.
what was,
Yeah.
well, third rail that converted to housing.
Yeah,
The building just, south of the third rail was retail, that's
Mhm.
now 2 apartments. The, feed store that Tim owned,
mhm.
that was retail, now that is a,
Gray's Electric.
Gray's Electric.
Mhm.
Yeah,
We had there was a country store just below Lakeside, that's no
Mhm.
longer, and so I've seen, since I've been there, a lot of, you know, loss of retail. We lost the entire Colby block, you know,
Right,
to
right,
fire.
right.
And that never, you know, that's now,
Yeah, lucky you, got a Dollar General. Lucky.
well, yeah, you know, and,
Yeah.
but the thing, I don't mind the Dollar General because, I look at the folks that are in there, and I think it's a reasonable place. You try to go into Wings and purchase anything, you'll pay double what you pay at Hannaford's.
Well, or go to Chapman's, which, you know, is a great place.
Oh.
But they like add 25% to like their beer.
Right, well, that, again, that's why I don't, you know,
Yeah,
at least,
yeah,
you know, at
but-
Dollar General, I know
Yeah.
that people can get their milk and their basic needs met
Yeah.
there at a reasonable
Yeah.
price.
And
so-
that's the sad part about all this, you know,
Yeah.
we're losing our local small stores because
Yeah.
they can't compete with the
Yeah.
big chains.
But I will say, I think Lyme does have services, and, you know, a lot of people come and go out of Brett's place on the corner of the Common. I mean, there's, you know, spa services, there's hair cutters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that kind
Mhm.
of, yeah, that kind of thing,
Mhm.
so, you know, fortunately, there are those things, but I don't think that this is gonna fit in the housing chapter, the, you know, the business.
I'll grant that,
If it was something
Yeah.
like I mean, we might wanna say in our housing, you know, that we still wanna have home occupations and that type of thing like we do. that-
Interesting.
But,
Does this,
but what, I mean, this seems more like economic development or, you know, downtown, you know, how to strengthen the downtown by putting more businesses in it or something like that type of thing than in the housing chapter.
let me chew on whether I can recast that. Mixed
Okay.
Are there any
use is
rules in
coming
the
to
town of
mind,
Lyme
but
about one's
I'll-
ability to
I'll-
conduct
I'll
a
take it off
business
the
out of
table.
one's home?
Okay,
Yes, but you are allowed. It's what's called home occupation, and so you can run, you know, say you decide to, continue your law work from your home, you can create an office and,
And for Fed.
Second
But,
premise
but,
is two
but you,
offices.
I think you're restricted with number of employees.
yes, you are
Stuff like
restricted.
that.
Yeah, three.
You have home occupation and cottage industry, and cottage industry limits you to three full-time equivalents.
Yeah.
And,
So Lyme fiber is probably the thing that makes Lyme most
Oh,
economically
yeah.
viable for people,
Yeah.
because a lot of the
Yeah.
recent growth in economic activity is
right, it's not visible.
content or
Right,
products being
right,
sold over the internet
right.
and.
or people just working, from home,
Working from
Yeah,
and
yeah.
having, you know, being able to have internet to, you know, have meetings, and it's, that, prior to Lyme fiber, that, other than cell phone, the internet service, was one of the biggest reasons that, people were not moving into town, was because, they couldn't work remotely.
Right.
Well, it'd be interesting to see, like, you know, the census has a, how long is your commute to work thing, and how that has changed since Lyme fiber came. And, no, but seriously, that is.
Well, no, I'm thinking
and-
from my bedroom to my
Right.
dining room.
Right, right, and then, you know, and then you look at the carbon offset for that, I mean, it's really impressive, and, you know, it's a huge gift to the town to have that as an option, not only because it's convenient, but also because it really supports, I think, the energy chapter and, you know, the
Right.
sustainability stuff.
So the Lyman's generator starts. Lose power.
But when we lost power, I took a walk up the street and came down, and you could hear this din. There were so many generators around the common area
Oh,
going,
really?
it was so loud,
Is that,
and,
the backup generator at the Lyme Inn supports Lyme fiber?
That was my understanding, yes. You
At the
know-
Lyme Inn, yes, yes.
That's interesting. I have fiber through, you know, it used to be, what was it?
First
Now it's
Net?
no, it's Consolidated Communications, but it used to be,
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
before Lyme fiber,
Yes.
I had
how
at
did you
least.
get that?
It's
Well,
easy, you
because
just
I was working
pay
at a
lot of
law firm
money.
in Boston.
Yeah.
And every time the internet went down, every time my DSL went down, I actually literally had to get in my car and drive to Boston. And so I did that about a dozen times, and then I said, I called up,
Enough of that.
what was it, before Consolidated, it was began.
Fairpoint.
Fairpoint, yeah.
Fairpoint, yeah.
I called them up and said, how much do you want to run fiber to my house?
You're kidding.
And they said, I think it was about $12,000.
Uh-huh,
Do it. It was so
so
worth it.
you went right down Pond Lane?
Uh-huh.
You're kidding?
Nope.
And how many people have signed on with that?
One.
Just you?
Yeah,
You paid the whole thing?
yeah.
And then nobody else is, because wouldn't they defray some of your costs if?
I don't know if it would have or not, they quoted me a price. They didn't charge me for the installation, they just said, you have to sign up for 4 years, I think
Right,
it was, and it's
right.
gonna be $1,000 a month,
Yeah.
and that's the
Wow,
deal.
wow.
Yeah,
Well,
so you're,
but that's
so it's
good, right
consolidated now, right? It's,
Hmm?
Yeah,
it's consolidated
Yeah.
now, because we have that
And
too.
now it's come down because they're competing with Lawn Fiber,
Right.
but.
Right,
Right.
wow.
Yeah, we have the same
Yeah.
thing, it just comes down the river road and we have consolidated, you know.
Huh.
It's-
Well, I think.
Anyway, so
we've
let's
had a
come
lot of
back, yes.
Right.
discussion here, and I think we
Right.
should be trying to wrap up for
Okay.
the evening.
I wonder if I could take a stab at
I would love that.
trying to
Yes.
merge everything that I received
Yeah.
plus
I'll
Rich's.
get you updates,
Yeah,
thank you.
well, the one on the workforce
Yes.
especially,
Mhm.
okay, that would be good, and I'll put it together, and if you guys can get it to me, I'll get it to David, early next week, so if you can get it to me over the weekend, if you have any additions.
Okay.
And, actually, you need to send it to David, I guess, and he sends it to me, so if you can get it to him tomorrow.
Yep.
I mean, everyone's.
I'm here till 3 tomorrow, so.
And then he can send it to me and I can put it together over the weekend and get it to him so we can send it out for our next meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay, and some of these are very similar, it's just, you know, using different words, and, but I'll try to include all the sense of stuff that people have put in there. And then we'll have one list, and some of the things will be put into strategies like, specifically 3 and 4 dwelling units as a permitted use with the village districts is not a goal, that would be a way to implement
Mhm.
some of this housing stock stuff under number 1, right, Tim? So that's like a recommendation, so the goal, the strategy would be, you know, one of them, and then yours would be more of a recommendation, so I'll try to put it in like that. All right, so by tomorrow, everyone get
Mhm.
anything else they wanna add to the list right now, this is the last time to David, and he'll send it to me, and I'll put it in A list, and then we can talk about it. And then, you know, maybe it's time to, you know, get it out and say, folks, we're starting to work on a housing chapter, here are some goals that we're thinking about. How do you like them, you don't,
Yep.
what have we forgotten, and, you know, if you don't like this, tell us why. So,
Mhm.
and then what ways, how can we implement some of this stuff?
Great. So, Vicki, what about planned development? Now, Rich was talking about doing 5 units. You can do up to 6, right, on planned development? What's the
I'd have to,
I don't have my zoning ordinance.
Well, I
so-
wrote that, I think it is
Uh-huh.
no more than 6. Yeah, what are the restrictions on planned development? Doesn't
I'd have
that-
to,
That gives us a
That we
lot
use-
of
we-
stuff.
Well, it could, and maybe that's just like, we need to allow it in different places.
Right.
But even supporting 6 units is a big septic.
Right.
Oh, I'm not saying it's cheap, I'm just saying,
but 6 units per
Ordinance.
building.
Right.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm saying the
Still
ordinance
exempt.
shouldn't prohibit it.
But didn't you look at that when you did your common analysis, David, at what the soil types were?
Yep.
And so.
Yeah,
when
that was, we basically decided that septic was going to be
The limiting factor.
the limiting factor, and we looked at the soil
Mhm.
types and did some calculations
In the Lyme Common District.
in Lyme Common District, and kind of figured out by lot, you know, what that lot could support for a septic system.
Right.
Well, you know, it'd be interesting to see what we thought Ray's lot, Tracy's old house, could support,
Mhm.
and then what it ended up with, because that's kind of like, and I'm not even saying what Ray did was economical, because I think the costs were way beyond what he ever expected, but, it
Well,
just.
yeah.
Guarantee you they were.
Yeah, well,
See,
I.
He had to tear down the
back,
building and
yeah.
add, that's what
Yeah.
really, and that's because of the regulations with
Fire
more than
code.
2 units in an old building, that's
Right.
ridiculous. I mean, it's,
Right,
you know, they were making him do stuff that it didn't make it
Right.
financially feasible.
yeah,
You know, he had to raise the height of the foundation to.
Well, he had
the
to
basement was-
attach the walls to the foundation.
Yeah.
And then they wanted to put in all new rafters, and the rafters had been there for about 200 years, gone through the hurricane in 1938, everything was fine, but they were gonna make him do new rafters. I mean, it was ridiculous.
this is Ray Clark's little development
Yeah,
on the
that-
common.
That front.
And that's something, you know, again, the planning board has nothing,
Right, we have no control, but it's
So
it's
who's
just too
they, the
bad.
fire?
No, it's the
it's
state,
state building codes.
state building codes, it's
Oh.
So did he
ridiculous.
have to do that, or did
And
he
those
just choose?
apply
to-
to-
No, Rich, what he did was, he tore
I
it,
think he
he had
had more
4
than-
units
he had-
there.
He
it's number
designed 4
6.
units, yeah.
Well, the building
Yeah.
would hold, because there were 4 apartments there. So, but he had to tear down the whole back L. So he only put 2 units in the front, which let him not have to meet the
Not to have to meet all
specifications.
those, yeah.
And then he put
that's-
2 in the back. And, but it's crazy, I mean, you know, these regulations were ridiculous. I mean, the
Well, I think
house-
that's one of the things that, the regulations by the state prohibit a lot of what the town would allow.
Well, you know, I think
Yeah.
in Hanover, I mean, I hate to talk about Hanover all the time, but it is a fact where if you come up for historic reasons, you know, against the building code, you can convene the building code advisory committee and get
Oh, yeah.
relief.
Hmm.
So, you know, I don't
You mean
know.
the state?
Yeah,
the
no,
state
no,
level?
there's a local group that can
But
exempt you.
Hanover has adopted its own building codes. And
Yeah.
so that's why you have that appeal process. There is an appeal process through the state also.
Well, I
But-
think that, you know, and I know Ray didn't need another hurdle,
Yeah.
but, you know, and that's something maybe the historical commission can help with, if people run up against that, to help
Right.
that person get through that hurdle, you
Right.
know? Cause, there are ways around those kinds of things if you have the time. And,
Wow.
you know, it's just like
Yeah.
one more thing on the list to do.
Yeah, cause it did seem ridiculous, I mean, you know.
Yeah, well, for him to have to tear down the thing, yeah.
Yeah.
But it'd be good to look and see what we thought was gonna go there and what are we ending up with,
Mhm.
which, cause there already were 2 units there, and then.
Four.
Well,
So there
no,
were
there were
two, Tracy had two,
Yeah, there's upstairs and downstairs,
Oh, I thought she had.
no,
oh, she had two.
Okay, she had
2, and then it's gone to 5.
Right.
So,
With the barn.
with net increase is just 3.
But then he was gonna do two, he could have done 2 more in
Right,
the back, right?
and we, yeah, I don't think that was totally, I mean, he withdrew that. There was a plan for him to do, but it wasn't there 4 back there, there were more than
No,
just
2
2.
more, he was
Yeah.
gonna do, so he's gonna do 7 total,
Yeah.
yeah, right. Yeah, but I think he just ran out of.
Well, he ran out
energy.
of patience, I mean, that was just getting to be crazy, but.
Yeah.
Need a motion to adjourn?
But before you do that, I have
Yes.
one more item for the board.
Oh,
The select board received a notification of an application for a liquor license at the skiway for what they're calling a seasonal sports recreation facility cocktail lounge. And,
What? So what, do we go mountain biking and then go
Well,
up there and have a drink?
I guess that, I don't know any details
new place for
because,
Sean to hang out.
yeah, they've not provided any deal. I did give them a
So-
building permit to modify the inside of the lodge some.
So this is the college that's running it?
It's a separate group, but within that facility.
Wicked Tasty LLC?
Yeah, which I assume is part of Wicked Awesome is there. But anyway, the question to the board is, do you feel this is enough of a change of use that it needs to go to site plan review?
Hold it, is this like a fraternity?
No, this is a separate company that's going to run the
A cocktail lounge?
cocktail lounge within the
It's a
ski.
skiway.
And the Dartmouth College wants to do this?
They're-
Money.
My understanding is that Dartmouth College was already, had a liquor license. They had one for some period of time, and then it lapsed, and they applied for a new one 1 or 2 years back.
Yep.
It was the college, I think, that was applying, and then they changed their mind about how they wanted to proceed, and so they dropped that application. But I know the select board comments were solicited from the select board when the application was pending, and now they've dropped it, and instead, I think the approach they're taking is they're gonna have whoever their tenant is, or maybe whoever they're hiring to manage the facility or
They
run
just do the
some
catering.
element, the
Yeah.
catering of the
And they'll-
facility.
they'll make
That-
money
They'll
if
be the
something-
ones who get the
Does
liquor
the
license.
select board want the planning board to review this? I mean, did you guys put any,
We just got it,
limitations?
we just got
Okay,
this
so
at the
here's-
same time David did,
Would
so we
you,
haven't.
would
we
you,
haven't,
I mean, the only thing I can think of is hours of operation, I mean,
Yeah, I was gonna say, is it open 6 days a week?
yeah, so,
We have a whole,
But-
Sean is on the warpath with those
Okay.
guys for all kinds of
okay,
reasons.
good, so, but
Shawnee
you,
and Scott.
you guys could do conditions for this, like hours of operation, but we don't have a full-time police person here in this community, so I don't think this should be allowed to operate when we don't have, when you gotta call up to Twin Mountain to get somebody to come if there's a problem, that's, you know,
Well,
that's not
the
okay,
serving of
so-
liquor at the skiway is not something new, that's been happening for a while.
I understand, but this could be like the home away from home from everybody at Dartmouth to go up there and drink. And, you know, I don't,
Yeah,
so if you could put some limits on the hours of operation, I don't know that us doing site plan, there's a huge parking lot, there's a huge septic, they've got exterior lighting, they might put up a new sign, the building is already there. I don't really see what our review of this could be doing except for limiting the hours of
Hours.
operation.
Right.
Well, I think, would it become a public hearing? I mean, I think that there should be probably a public hearing to allow citizen input, because if I lived up there and there was the possibility of a bar, I think I
Well, you
would,
could walk to the bar.
I would be
Yeah, you
having
wouldn't
strong
have to drive.
feelings probably one way or the other.
That's interesting.
So how far away is it from you? You
I wanna
don't
walk there.
So David, we don't think this is in conjunction with skiing, this could be a year-round separate
No,
bar.
I think it's just a winter thing.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? Just
I
a-
think they're hiring a catering person to come in and run their food operation.
They are,
The person
I-
wants to
Yeah.
serve beer,
I
probably.
know,
Well, can we
Well,
get
no, because this is
clarification, because.
Right, I really have no way of getting, asking for the board unless you're going to go through site plan review.
I mean, they have events there, I mean, it's already more than a ski lodge, it's an event center.
Yeah.
There's weddings there all the time, and there's a lot of alcohol then.
Right, right, although they're getting, the caterer gets the license
Yes.
and has the bartenders and
Right.
it's on the caterer's head.
Right, yeah, I mean, I don't see what, unless we can what do we tell them, that they need to have security, or, somebody
Well, it sounds like
looking for
we-
drunk
I'll raise
drivers?
this again, and this is a
Yeah.
topic that's under consideration by the select board, so
Right.
let me go back to the
it sounds
select
like
board.
we need more details
Right.
of what it's gonna be.
I think so,
Yeah.
because I mean, just reading a cocktail lounge, to me, that it doesn't say that it's seasonal, it doesn't say it's.
Well, it does say seasonal, seasonal sports recreation facility cocktail lounge, so.
Yeah, well, which seasons?
Yeah, well,
Well,
that's,
that's right, so I think maybe the thing to do is for us to say to the select board, get some more information here, like what do they got
Well,
in
do you
mind?
want us to review it? I mean, if you guys have the ability to put conditions on it, I'm good with your conditions, but.
The last time we got one of these letters at the select board,
Mhm,
my understanding was that our only prerogative was to provide a comment letter.
uh-huh,
And to say, we think this is a good idea, we don't think it's a good idea.
Mhm, okay.
And that just went to the liquor commission for them to put in their pipe and smoke.
mhm, mhm.
Right,
Yeah, that's
The
what
planning
this
board
letter
might
says.
have more ability to,
right.
Do
'Cause
something.
years ago, I remember, Vicky remembers this, we, planning board put restrictions on the Lyme Inn as far as how late, remember that? How
Yep.
late they could serve
Yep.
liquor and
Yep.
everything.
Yep, and Faith and John were there, and Cynthia Bagnolo also, because she was a owner at that time. Were very interested in limiting, hours, and like when last call was gonna have to be and stuff like that. So,
Right.
I mean, that's what we did, and I don't know, that's why I was thinking if you guys could limit hours. And I'm also a little concerned about security. I mean, going through Tannery, even when you live there and go through there twice a day, but for people who are occasional visitors to that place, and if they're drinking and, just
Yeah.
knowing what police response is, and, I know our fast squad's really good, but,
You figure you got 80 hours maximum coverage of police during the entire week.
yeah, and there's no cell service up there, so.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought they put something up there, no. Huh.
Why would we not look at it?
Well, because I don't know if, like, what, they're not changing anything on the exterior, right? So all we're looking at is the operations that we would want to regulate.
Right.
So maybe we could do site plan review and just not do any of all the other stuff.
Well, we're not
Just
doing any site plan, what we're doing is regulating the operation, and that's what
Well, we
it,
could cover it under site plan, maybe.
Well, I mean, I think that's part of our responsibility is, I mean, I don't know what they're permitted to do up there, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a 9 to 5 or 9 to 4 type of operation, 4 months out of the year.
no,
And-
there's events up there.
And then they
There's
have
stuff on-
occasional events,
No, and the
but,
kids go there when they do the hike to Moose Lock. I
And
mean,
we don't
there's-
want the kids drinking.
No,
Yeah.
no, but there's a lot of stuff, and
Or the
they
same
stage
others.
all the freshman trips there. There's a lot that goes on, not during the
I think if
winter.
the select board could get more information and then,
Let me try to do that and I'll get.
We're
back to
opening
you,
up a
Jill.
whole can of worms about what goes on at the skiway. I mean, honestly,
oh, you think, no.
yeah,
What goes on at the skiway stays at the skiway.
So, it's not urgent that, I mean, you probably have a meeting or two before we have our
We
next.
meet next Thursday, yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't see any deadline or nothing in here that says when we'd have to respond.
Well, it could be one of those things where if you don't respond within 45 days, you don't get
I would
a
look at
chance to.
the RSA.
Oh, gosh, there's no-
Yeah, I'm sure there's because, I mean, anybody, in Hanover, it's always a rush to get your alcohol, your liquor license, so you can open up and be there for homecoming or what, you
Well,
know.
this is just providing us with notice. It sounds like
Yeah.
what David is saying is that we have an alternative way to attack this if we wanted to, and that's
Uh-huh.
through the zoning.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that would be, I don't know if we have our own timetable for that, or if our options are,
Well, through the zoning is a whole different thing. Is the use not permitted? Is this a skiway use?
Well, that's what I need to go through, I just got this,
Yeah, okay,
Yesterday,
because if it's
so-
not permitted by zoning, we shouldn't have a site plan until they have a use variance.
well, there is something in the zoning about, the, and I have
Skiway
to-
district?
Yeah, well, about, food service.
Table.
Well, this is
for-
drinks.
By what? For what it's
Yeah.
worth,
Well, there's food service, which is an eating establishment in the skiway district.
Uh-huh.
And so, it doesn't, there isn't anything that really talks about
Saloons?
alcoholic.
well, for
Yeah,
what it's
but-
worth, I know the person, Hal Covert, who is gonna do the food there next year.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he would be somebody who would be doing any liquor. So it sounds like this cocktail lounge is totally separate from what the
Yeah.
food's gonna be.
Yep.
It'll be an entity unto itself, I think, the cocktail.
is there a section of the zoning ordinance that deals specifically with the skiway?
The
Yes.
skiway district.
So I need to look at that and see.
Yeah.
So,
And, you know, if the zoning ordinance doesn't say anything about alcohol, and now they wanna serve alcohol, does that?
We don't talk about alcohol, I mean, it's just like restaurants, and so a bar is like a typical customary accessory use to a restaurant.
Okay.
So that's, that's how it
Yeah.
goes, but,
And they're gonna have a restaurant, you know, there.
well, they have to sell a certain amount of food to get a liquor license,
Right.
right? And so,
They
there
sell a ton
has-
of food.
what?
They sell a ton of food.
No, but this would be like, for not ski hours,
Oh,
so that it was,
interesting.
if it was like, now, oh, let's have cocktails out on the deck. And, look at the wildflowers and, watch the night sky. I mean, it's a
So-
really nice location, actually, to sit out there and enjoy a cocktail, I would think. But it changes, because the Acrole's right across the street, I mean,
Yeah. The college probably thinks of it as a way to make money,
of course,
because they're gonna get a percentage of all the
yes,
money made.
Yes.
Phrase some of the expense, but
Yeah.
anyway.
yes.
Good. Shall we adjourn?
I think I accept the motion
Oh,
from
A
David.
long time
I
ago.
think I seconded it a long time ago.
All right.
just as everyone goes, grab,
Oh, a new zoning
this is
law.
a new zoning.
Yay, thank you.
Now, I also included in the back, the floodplain ordinance, the telecommunications
Oh,
ordinance, and.
brilliant.
Great
Yes.
job.
So
David.
all of
Nice
those
job.
are,
Great, David. Did you take out the senior houses?
no, there's a note that
We have
says,
to vote on that, right?
no, the town has to vote on that.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you put the note there that says, as
Yes,
of
as of
July
first.
first.
Well, thank you for putting those other ordinances in
Thanks,
there.
guys.
That's a great idea. Good night,
See you.
Dave.
Thanks for being here.
Before you go.
Yeah.
I have a notice of decision from the tree trimming hearing.
Oh, yeah.
You can take that with you if you want to look it over before signing it, or if you are happy with it, just, and wanna sign it, doesn't matter to me.
Hey, Rich, have they marked your trees yet?
No, I've heard nothing.
Yeah, they haven't marked my tree yet either, so I just wanted to make sure.
I don't know if I have any trees that they're